Trump just declared a massive trade win with China. Rare earth minerals, student visas, promises of better cooperation. It sounds like the breakthrough America needed. Except, it's not. Xi Jinping hasn't signed anything. There's no official statement, just Trump talking, and China's foreign minister mocking the US, warning that Beijing won't be bullied. So what's really going on here? After months of silence, why would China suddenly accept a deal that benefits America? Unless it's not really a deal at all. When we dug deeper, it stopped looking like peace and started looking like a trap.
But the deal isn't final yet. It still needs confirmation from President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
Here's what should really make you pause. The US is still slapping steep tariffs on Chinese imports. Meanwhile, China appears to be offering something incredibly valuable. Rare earth minerals, vital for everything from smartphones to fighter jets, while getting almost nothing in return. Why would China make such a lopsided deal? What's really happening behind closed doors? Stay with us because things aren't adding up, and this so-called deal might not be what it seems. First, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Now let's dig into what's actually happening behind this mysterious trade agreement. After 2 days of talks, a new trade deal between the US and China has been agreed upon in London. It seems to bring back parts of older trade agreements, but this time with more specific promises. US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick called it putting meat on the bones, meaning it gives more details to earlier, vague agreements. The biggest part of the deal is that China has agreed to restart shipments of rare earth materials and folded magnets. These are very important for the US military electronics and clean energy industries. In return, the US will allow more Chinese students to come study in American universities. This is a big change from the earlier policies under Trump, which had made it harder for Chinese students to enter the US. The Trump administration has stated that all the pending issues have been resolved, and now there is an agreement.
Well, we have an agreement. We have the Geneva Agreement. Right now, we've agreed on a framework to implement that, right? We have an agreement already.
But here's the catch. The deal isn't final. Neither President Trump nor President Xi Jinping has officially signed it. Only the US has talked about it publicly. Without signatures from both sides, this deal is still floating in political uncertainty. This raises a serious question. Can a trade deal that hasn't been signed and isn't equal really change the global economy? Or is it just a performance meant to look good to voters back home? Meanwhile, China's foreign minister Wang Yi recently accused the US of acting like a bully with its global tariffs.
The US only wants itself to be great, while China advocates for building a community with a shared future for mankind.
While saying this, he was meeting with officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo during a major summit in China. There, China signed a new agriculture deal with Congo. Both countries criticized the US for acting alone and said they would support each other. Right now, a deal is being agreed upon where China will charge zero tariffs on imports from Africa. This meeting was just one stop on Wang Yi's tour of several African countries. It shows that China is no longer focused only on dealing with the US. Instead, it's building strong new partnerships that don't depend on American influence. This move came only days after China also strengthened its ties with countries in Southeast Asia and the Gulf at a big summit with the GCC. This is a serious warning for the US. America's main export to China has been agricultural goods. But now China is turning to Africa for those products. This means the US is losing one of its few bargaining chips. China has already signed similar deals with Brazil and Argentina. If Africa joins that list, US farmers, many of whom rely on Chinese demand, could lose a critical market overnight. And that's just one part of the bigger picture. Because when you look closer at the terms of this so-called deal, it doesn't just seem shaky. It starts to look dangerously one-sided. According to early reports, the US will keep a 55% tariff on goods coming in from China. But China will only charge a 10% tariff on US imports. This glaring imbalance has left economists scratching their heads. Economists are warning that this deal might not benefit the US as much as it seems. Even though China is offering lower tariffs, it has other ways to block or limit US companies from selling there. These include things like complicated rules, surprise inspections, delays at customs, or requiring licenses that are hard to get. These tricks are known as non-tariff barriers. So even if American products face just 10% in tariffs, they may still struggle to enter China's market. Want to know what's even trickier? China could still give huge financial help called subsidies to its own companies. These subsidies make Chinese goods cheaper and more competitive. So even with lower tariffs, US companies might still be pushed out of the market. It starts to look like China is playing by its own rules while pretending to cooperate. Another important thing to understand is that China is no longer as dependent on the US as it used to be. In the past, selling to American customers was a big part of China's economy. But things have changed. Since 2021, China has started focusing more on its own people to grow the economy. This plan is called the dual circulation strategy. It means using local demand more and depending less on foreign countries like the US. So, China may not care much about losing some sales to the US because of the 55% tariffs. Chinese leaders are already working on building up local consumption and finding new trading partners in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Countries that are more open to Chinese investments and less likely to fight over trade. Here's the twist. Not only is China trying to sell less to the US, but it's also getting ready to buy less from the US. But it gets even more interesting. Even though China has promised to keep tariffs low on American goods, it might not end up buying much anyway. If Chinese companies lose money because they can't sell as much in the US due to the high 55% tariff, they'll have to save money somewhere else. That could mean cutting down on buying things from the US important American exports, like soybeans, airplanes, computer chips, and cars, might see fewer orders from China. This could hit US farmers and factories hard. Many of these businesses were hoping for more sales to China, but now they may be disappointed. And some of these products are grown or built in US states that are politically sensitive. China could even use this as a strategy, buying less from areas that are important to US elections. We've seen this before. During the last trade war from 2018 to 2020, China stopped buying soybeans from places like Iowa to put pressure on US politicians. They might do it again. So while the US government says this trade deal is a win, smaller American businesses might actually lose out. So it looks like China is just pretending to give in while secretly making itself stronger at home. Behind all the news and political drama, a quieter but serious problem is starting to grow. Inflation is on the rise, but at a slow pace, which makes it hard for people to notice. The latest Consumer Price Index, CPI report, shows that prices rose by 2.4% over the past year, up slightly from 2.3% in April. This increase might seem small, but it's worrying to the Federal Reserve, which wants to keep inflation around 2%. To most people, a 0.1% increase might not sound like a big deal. But when prices keep rising a little each month, it starts to hurt. For example, appliances and electronics, things like refrigerators, TVs, and laptops, have gone up by almost 1% in just 1 month. This is likely because of the ongoing tariffs, or extra taxes on imported goods. These tariffs were meant to pressure other countries like China, but they are now acting more like a tax on American shoppers. There is some good news. Egg prices have dropped by 2.7%, giving people a small break on their grocery bills. But this small drop doesn't change the bigger picture. Prices for most food items, like meat, dairy, and fruits and vegetables, are still going up. Gas and transportation prices are steady for now, but experts warn that if oil prices rise again, we could quickly see fuel costs go up too. The kind of inflation we're seeing is also important. When we take out food and energy prices, core inflation is still climbing. That shows us that the overall pressure on prices is sticking around. At the same time, wages for many workers, especially those with lower incomes, are not going up much, which means people are actually losing buying power, even if the economy looks strong on the surface. This puts the Federal Reserve in a very tough spot. They've said they might lower interest rates soon, possibly in September, to help boost the economy, especially with the election season coming next year. But cutting rates when inflation is rising is risky. Lower interest rates could help the stock market, but they might also make inflation even worse. Wall Street may be watching nervously, but regular people are already feeling the pain. These tariffs, which were supposed to pressure China, are now raising prices in the US. The longer they stay in place, the more they hurt families and businesses by increasing costs and making inflation harder to control. Could the US-China trade deal, which still hasn't been signed, make inflation worse at the worst possible time? If things go wrong, the Federal Reserve might be forced to choose between fighting inflation and helping the economy during election season. Either choice could hurt. And here's the real danger. When inflation truly ignites, it doesn't creep. It explodes. But inflation isn't the only ticking time bomb in this deal. Because beneath all the talk of tariffs and student visas lies a far more strategic and potentially explosive issue: control over critical materials essential to modern warfare and technology. The true prize in this trade war is rare earth minerals. These aren't ordinary resources. They're the backbone of everything from missile guidance systems and fighter jets to EVs and smartphones. Without them, America's military and tech industries would be in serious trouble. China controls over 69% of the world's rare earth supply and 90% of global processing capacity. That means even if other countries like the US or Australia mine these minerals, they still need China to refine them into usable materials. In short, the US relies heavily on China to keep its military and high-tech industries running. Recently, China started sending rare earth exports to the US again. This move comes during a time when the two countries are still fighting over trade. Even more surprisingly, China didn't ask for any major tariff reductions in return. That's unusual. Normally, a country would only restart such important exports if it got something big in return. So why did China do this? The answer might be worrying. It's probably not out of kindness. It's a way to keep control. By giving the US just enough rare earths to keep its industries going, China keeps America dependent. It's like giving someone just enough medicine to survive, but never enough to be free. This move could delay US efforts to build its own supply chain and make it harder to stop depending on China in the future. Right now, it might feel like a relief, but years from now, it could be a dangerous trap. The risk is very real. A 2024 US Department of Defense report said that more than 90% of the magnets used in American precision weapons come from China. If China stops exports again, the US could lose the ability to produce these weapons. This isn't just a theory, it's happened before. In 2010, China stopped rare earth exports to Japan during a political conflict, showing it's willing to use this power. If the US doesn't act now, by building its own refining capacity, securing reliable allies and stockpiling rare earths, it could soon face a national security crisis. Because the next time China cuts off exports, it may not be during peacetime. It could be during a major conflict, perhaps even over Taiwan. This isn't about if China will weaponize rare earths again. It's about when. And the real question is, will the US be ready or caught completely off guard? We're still waiting to hear from Xi Jinping on the so-called trade deal. But while the world watches for comments, the consequences are already in motion. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next update. Because this story is far from over.